Welcome back, everyone, to Storytime with the Shiny One. I'm your host, Mr. J, the man, the myth, the legend, the glare you see from outer space. That's right, my head's so shiny it could have guided ships into a harbor back in the 1800s. When the Civil War ended around 1865, the Union was victorious, but the country was a mess. The South was in ruins. Farms, cities, railroads, all destroyed. Over 600,000 soldiers were dead. Millions of newly freed African Americans were looking for homes, jobs, and rights. Imagine your group project partner just deletes half of the slides and then moves to another state. That's about how the North felt trying to rebuild the South. So, the big question was, how do we bring the South back into the Union? And what happens to all of the freed and enslaved people? President Abraham Lincoln, he had a plan, and it was a forgiving one. Very forgiving. It was called the 10% plan. Basically, if 10% of your voters in a southern state swore loyalty to the Union and agreed to end slavery, that state could form a new government and rejoin the United States. Lincoln merely just wanted to bind up the nation's wounds and get us back together. Which, honestly, sounds like something a nurse might say right before putting on a Band-Aid the size of Texas. But not everyone liked this plan. Some thought it was too soft. Enter the radical Republicans in Congress, a group that said, "Hold up, Mr. Lincoln, we can't just let the South back in like nothing ever happened." They wanted a harsher punishment for former Confederate leaders and stronger protection for freed African Americans. They passed their own idea, called the Wade-Davis Bill, which required a majority of white men in a state to swear loyalty. Lincoln quietly pocket vetoed it, which means he didn't sign it and he just kind of let it die. Honestly, the political version of leaving someone on red. But then, tragedy struck. Lincoln was assassinated in April of 1865. Vice President Andrew Johnson became president. Johnson was from the South, and boy, did that make things complicated. He wanted to follow a plan similar to Lincoln's, but he gave lots of pardons to former Confederate leaders. He also let Southern states pass the Black Codes, laws that limited the freedom of African Americans. Congress was not happy. Imagine giving your little brother a TV remote, and he starts changing all your settings. That's how Congress felt about Johnson. By 1867, Congress said, enough is enough, and they took charge. They passed the Reconstruction Acts, dividing the South into 5 military districts. Union troops were sent in to make sure new governments were fair and African Americans could vote. They also pushed through some game-changing legislation. The 13th Amendment, which ended slavery and freed Africans. The 14th Amendment, which gave citizenship and equal protection under the law to these newly freed men. And the 15th Amendment, which gave African American men the right to vote. That's right, 3 amendments that completely reshaped a nation. It's like the ultimate patch update for the United States Constitution. To help freed people transition to life after slavery, Congress created the Freedmen's Bureau. In 1865, they provided food, education, and medical care. They even helped freedmen find jobs and reunite families. In fact, the Bureau helped build thousands of schools, including some that became colleges. Talk about leveling up in education. Well, despite all its good intentions, Reconstruction was rough. There was violence from groups like the Ku Klux Klan, resistance from white Southerners, and ongoing political battles. President Johnson was eventually impeached, though he stayed in office by just 1 vote. That's closer than my chances of making it through a buffet without dropping something. Over time, Northern support for Reconstruction faded. By 1877, federal troops withdrew from the South, ending the Reconstruction era. So, was Reconstruction a success or a failure? Well, It's complicated. Successes. The Union was restored. Slavery was abolished. And African Americans gained citizenship and voting rights. But challenges still remain. Racism and segregation continued. Many freed people struggled economically. And the South passed laws like Jim Crow, undoing much of the progress that was made. So, Reconstruction was like fixing your phone screen, but using duct tape. It worked, but only kind of. Even though Reconstruction ended, it planted the seeds for the civil rights movement nearly a century later. The ideas of equality, voting rights, and freedom did not disappear either. They just took a little bit more time to grow. And that's the thing about history. Even if it's messy, it's full of lessons that shine through, kind of like my head under the classroom lights. So what can we learn from Reconstruction? That rebuilding takes patience, teamwork, and forgiveness. And even after great conflict, people can find a way forward. Thank you for tuning in to Storytime with the Shiny One. And remember, history might not repeat itself, but it sure likes to rhyme. Especially when I'm the one reading it out loud. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep your head and your mind shining bright.